you've done lots and lots of different work, and all of it revolves around storytelling.
Yep.
And so I think a cool place to start is, how do you, and this could be the most broad question, but I like that, is
Mhm.
how do you find and develop a good story?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, that's the core of the work that I end up doing, basically, whether that be kind of paid work for commercial clients or obviously kind of in my own kind of pursuits. I would say for me, like, I think the guiding principle is curiosity. Like, if something is interesting, if you feel like asking a follow-up question, I feel like that to me, that sense of curiosity, the like, I want to know a little bit more about this, is a great kind of intuitive place to start for developing an idea, developing a story. I think if you can kind of articulate it back, if I were to tell you, for instance, a project, not that I have written, just like I heard this thing about this one thing, and if I can catch your attention, I feel like that's a great indicator to me that I should keep going, keep pushing on it,
Mm,
keep figuring out what it might be. So I think like how that expresses itself is very kind of format dependent or dependent on kind of the output. You know, if you're trying to make a film, if you're trying to make a show, if you're just wanting to put out a short video on YouTube and do it on your own time or whatever. I think how you do it is kind of format specific, but I think for me, it's always that kind of, am I curious enough to ask the next question? I think is where I tend to start.
mm. What's an example of that maybe you knocked on the door and it opened? Like, what's an
So
example of a story that kind of
one
unfolded like
time,
that?
yeah, that's great. I mean, so one time, for instance, I had just moved to New York. So I'm from Texas, but I've been in New York the last 5 years. I came up here for kind of I was making the kind of official transition from DPing to directing, and so coming to New York was a part of that. And so I think as anyone who's kind of just hit the city, you end up taking subway a lot, and it's like that is the most different thing about living in New York than living anywhere else. Is just not just public transportation, but the subway in particular. And so there was this one guy who I kept seeing at the 7th Avenue station in Brooklyn, and he was like a busker. He was playing music, and just the way that his voice sounded in the subway was just like really compelling. And one day when I was standing there waiting to get on the train, he started playing a song, like a very obscure song that a friend of mine wrote. It was a David Ramirez song. David is a guy that I've been working on a feature with for a long time. Nobody knows David Ramirez tracks, and he was playing this David song, and it was really amazing. So I started filming it on my phone but the train showed up, and so as I was kind of backing up into the car of the train, he's playing the song, and the doors close, and then I like kept rolling as we started going off, and then I swiped the camera down, but I put it on Instagram and I tagged David. I was like, look, like your music's made it to the subway performers, and somebody messaged me and said, "Hey, that's my cousin. Like that guy is my cousin. Like I should connect you."
Hmm.
And I was like, "Okay, that's sure. Like that sounds interesting." And so she put me and the subway performer on an email, and he it turns out we lived in the same neighborhood, and we met up for coffee because I was like, "Just tell me about, I'm curious, like how does like subway performing fit into what you do? And how did you know about David's music?" And we were talking and da 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 da, and he said to me, "I've been living in New York for 10 years, and I've spent more time underground than I have above ground." Because he busks for his entire job. And that statement alone, I was like, "All right, can I hang out with you for a day, like while you're performing?" And he was like, "Yeah, no problem." So in like 2017, 2018, I spent an entire day with him filming, and I have no purpose for this. I have no clue. I don't know what I need it for. I don't know where it's going to go. We filmed, and also yeah, he's just a very kind of like compelling person to watch. And so I filmed for a day, and then we continue to meet up, and like nothing ever really comes from it. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I reached out to him and was just like, "Dude, like, what are you doing for work because your
Mm.
entire job was dependent on commuting and no one's commuting anymore. And he was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, I'm not really able to work like that anymore, and I don't know if I can stay and blah blah blah. And so a couple months into the pandemic, I asked him to meet up and we met up and I was like, it would be interesting for you and I to go back out to a subway station and you perform to no one. I just think that would be
Mm.
interesting. Like if you would perform in an empty subway station, maybe we could go up to like, Times Square or some like station that should be incredibly busy. And we ended up, he was like, all right, let's do it. We met up, got on the subway platform at the station where I'd originally met him. We were going to get on the train to go up to Times Square and, find a busy station that's empty. And there were like hundreds of people on the train when it pulled up. And we were both
Mm.
like, we hadn't really been out and we both were incredibly uncomfortable. We realized it was all like hospital workers, like going to hospitals and going to their jobs and essential workers basically. And we were like, what the hell are we doing? Like, we can't, I'm not getting on the train with them. Like it felt like we can't do this is like we're playing around and like they're going to do serious work, right?
Mm.
And so we were like, let's not do this. And so we came back out of the subway station and he was like, well, why don't we go to Prospect Park? And so we walked out to Prospect Park and it was like a foggy morning. And he was like, all right. I was like, all right, well, maybe you just set up and play a song like in the middle of Prospect Park. And so he walked out to the middle of Prospect Park, nobody around in the fog. And he sets up and starts playing like he would on the subway station. And all of a sudden, literally out of the mist, this guy goes like, "Jesse?" And he walks up and it was like one of his like regular commuter guys that he hadn't seen, in forever. And the guy was like, "Oh my god, like I haven't seen you and like I was wondering how you were doing." And they end up having this moment and Jesse ends up playing his favorite song for him and I filmed the whole thing. And so now I have this like incredible piece of material that's, kind of Jesse performing in a like pre-pandemic normal time and then I have this like very bizarre kind of like same performance in an empty field that, like, drew the people that used to listen to him, and, like, I still don't know what it is, but, like, I've been
Yeah.
kicking that around for, like, 4 years, right? And now he's left
Wow.
New York, he lives in Nashville, he doesn't do this anymore, and I recorded an interview with him, and I know that's I hate to, like, take up, like, 15 minutes telling one rambling story, but, like, I have that there are 10 of those happening at any given moment. And I feel
Mm.
like part of my process is I don't know if that's going to turn into something like specific. Am I going to make like an actual film out of that? Is it going to be inspiration for something that happens later? Um, do I just cut the footage together and put it on Instagram or YouTube? I don't really know and I don't really care, but I'm doing that. Like I've been out filming with Yo-Yo Ma, like, I've gone with him 3 times now, and, like, I just have a hard drive of footage of Yo-Yo, like, playing in places and meeting these people, and I
Mm.
don't know what's gonna come from that, and, like, I have these, like, weird experiments and street films that I make, and, like, all of these and then there's articles and things coming in, and I feel my obligation is to like continue to pull at these threads to see where they end up going. And I don't need
Mm.
to rush it. And I'm not scared of like not knowing what this film with Jesse would be. But I feel like like to go back to your really original question, I feel like that is my work is to just continue to like have those experiences and chase those ideas down, whether they come to fruition or not.